The first template use we're going to demonstrate is how to use the entire template, which is what you use for the most in any given block pattern or patchwork pattern. When you're using the elongated triangle, notice that you have a special case. It's not like using a half square triangle that you can flip around at will. Notice that with an elongated triangle, you have either a right-facing triangle or a left-facing one. So you need to pay attention. Of course, what this means also is that you're guaranteed to miscut a number of times, so don't worry about it. Let's say that you wanted to do a block like this one, and this is a typical star block that can be created with the elongated triangle. Notice that what you need to cut the star shape itself is this B triangle. All the triangles are lettered, and you need 4 of the B triangles cut out of the same fabric. The slow way to do that would be to place your template on the fabric and cut one out, turn it around, cut the next one, cut the next one, cut the next one. The faster way would be this. In order to cut all 4 triangles at the same time, place your template on the fabric and remember that this edge and this edge needs to be on the straighter grain because 2 of these together are going to create a rectangle. And then I just use one of the larger templates and I'm going to cut a rectangle that's about 1/2 inch longer and 1/2 inch wider than the template itself. So we'll cut a rectangle, and in order to cut 4 of the same kind of triangle, you need to have all your fabrics right side up. Because if you don't, you'll get half right-facing and half left-facing triangles. So at this point, before you cut, double check your pattern and make sure that you're cutting the triangle you want. Notice if I had placed the template like so on the fabric, I would get the opposite triangle. So I need to use the template wrong side up with the fabric right side up, and that will give me 4 of the triangles that I want. So I'm laying the template on the fabric so that these 2 edges are on the straighter grain and a little bit in from the edge. I'm going to cut the diagonal, and then in order to cut 4 at once, I merely rotate the 2 shapes around on top of the other 2, and then I can cut all 4 at once. Notice that I'm not lining up the edge of the template with the raw edge of the fabric. You always want to make fresh cuts with AnglePlay. So I'm going to, these rotating cutting boards are very handy for this operation. Notice also I'm not starting out here somewhere and aiming for the corner of the template. I'm piercing the fabric, backing up, and then going forward, and that keeps you from nicking your blade every time you cut, and it also keeps you from chipping away at your template. So just that fast, you have the 4 triangles that you need to make the star in the center of this block. Now, notice that we need not only the 4 that create the center that create the star, we also need the background fabric. We have 4 more of the same shape to create the rectangle that is that part of the patchwork block. So you can save yourself some time by cutting all 8 triangles at the same time by doing the following. You stack 2 layers of the star fabric and the 2 layers of the background fabric together, and just as we did in cutting out the star triangles, we're going to cut a rectangle that's 1/2 inch longer and 1/2 inch wider than the template itself. And now I'm cutting through 4 layers of fabric. Just as before, in order to cut them all and get the 8 of the same kind of triangle, all of the fabrics need to be right side up. So I'll turn them all right side up. I'm ready to place the triangle now, again double checking to make sure that I'm getting the triangle I want, and this isn't the triangle I want, this one is. So now I'll place the template on the 4 layers of fabric, a little bit in from the edge and on grain, and just as in the star triangles, I cut the diagonal, but this time instead of stacking all 8 layers together, I cut each 4 fabric layer individually. Again, accuracy is the name of the game with AnglePlay, and I think that cutting through 4 layers is about optimum. Once you get get beyond 4 layers, I think you can sometimes sacrifice accuracy. So again, I'm cutting through 4 layers, 2 star fabrics and 2 background fabrics. And now when you put the fabrics in place, just that fast, you have cut the 4 star triangles and the 4 background triangles at the same time. So the cutting of the triangles, the cutting of the shapes really goes quite fast. The magic of using AnglePlay is this: when you get all your triangles cut and it's time to pin them together for sewing, notice how beautifully they match up for sewing. This is how they look on the design wall. When you match these up to sew them together, they match up perfectly on the ends. There's no guesswork as to how they go together for sewing, and you'll get perfect seam allowances every time. I do recommend that you use thin pins, thinner straight pins for pinning the shapes together rather than thicker ones. And you sew a 1/4 inch seam, being careful that you're sewing the same 1/4 inch seam that's on the template. And I also recommend that you press the seams open. You're going to get better accuracy when you press all the seams open. It's a skill that you probably left behind in junior high dressmaking, but it is not as difficult to get used to as you might think. Now, the most important thing is when you sew your first pair of long triangles together, press the seam open and then measure the rectangle and make sure that it measures what it needs to get accurate results. The B triangle is a template that makes a 2 by 6 inch finished rectangle. So once you sew your triangles together and press them open, you should get a rectangle that measures 2.5 by 6.5. Be sure you do that check after sewing your first pair of triangles together, not the 35th, and finding out that you haven't been sewing the right seam allowance. So sew your first pair of triangles together with an accurate 1/4 inch seam, using thin pins to pin them together. Sew them together, press the seam open, and then measure to make sure that you're getting the size that you want. And then you will just be amazed at what sharp points you get in your patchwork, no matter how elongated the template is. And that's all there is to cutting with full-size triangles.